Dr. Mose, I had asked you, we're back here, Fungweni server, vifaranga via computer. What do you make of all of it?
Your initial question was, does the buck stop with IEBC? And I remember sitting here and saying, the I in IEBC stands for independent. And what does that mean for this current IEBC? Independence ideally should be free from coercion, free from intimidation, free from having relationships with political parties and political entities that would be questionable. It should be to operate within a space of integrity. Has the IEBC operated within those confines? I don't think so. And I don't think I'm saying this to entirely blame IEBC, because IEBC has not been an independent institution. And I would dare say right from the beginning. And the reason I say this is because if you have political parties and politicians having access to the IEBC, and when we say IEBC, of course now there is a matter in front of the court. Who is IEBC? Does it constitute all commissioners? Does it constitute 2 commissioners? Does it constitute the chair of the IEBC? So who is the IEBC? And I think that's a very important question. Who is the IEBC? Because if some of the allegations that we are reading are correct, that the chair was behaving in a manner likely to suggest I'm the one who's talking here, I have my powers, I make the decisions, and the rest of you endorse my decisions, that is a problem. Let's also go to the hiring of IEBC commissioners. I remember even sitting and saying, I was completely shocked as a person sitting and watching the IEBC interviews. And, you know, they were on TV, and looking at some of these candidates in total horror. One of them was sitting there, had finished his master's degree on a December, and on I think a September, and had finished his PhD the following January. And he was being asked, is it possible to finish a PhD in 4 months? And he said, actually, I remember he did this. He said, yeah, you know, I actually did it. And he was asked, are you serious? And for me, it was not even that this man was either lying or not. For me, it was, how did this man get shortlisted to come and, and defecate on a process that is so, you know, it should almost be a holy process. We are entrusting these individuals with political decisions. We, the people, are going to, one, give our information to this entity, this institution, in terms of once, you know, we are registered as voters, we're giving these people our information. Then we are going to give our time to go and participate in party primaries. We are going to give our time to go and line up to vote. Why do we have these kinds of individuals shortlisted for interview? It's like having somebody, you know, wants to be president, and then you shortlist total goons to come and stand there as, you know, these are people, this is the best that could be shortlisted. And for me, the entire process smacked of interference. These cannot be the best brains we have in the country, that you shortlist these people. And I even think that the people, you know, this was just a charade, because I don't think these people none of the people who were interviewed ended up in the IEBC, in the commission anyway. People later went and sat down, and I think they selected a few people, and they said, let's take this one. There was even, you know, earlier on, you know, a theory that, you know, that is now in the public domain, that Chebukati was not the person who scored the highest points when the position of chair was being interviewed for. How did he end up there? How did Wafula Chebukati end up facilitating this election of 2022 after the debacle of 2017? I remember raising this issue, and I was told, you shut up, you are not a lawyer, you don't understand that he has security of tenure. And I was like, what does security of tenure have to do with delivering the job? I have security of tenure where I work, but if I display incompetence, I will get fired. I will get fired. So again, this entire process, we're not just looking at the 2022 election. We are looking at our institutions as a country. We are looking at political interference. And let's be honest, some of the things we are reading here, these things are serious. That you can decide that, there is this allegation that some people, some entities, both inside and outside the country, were given login access to the IEBC server. Think about it for a minute. This is the server where the will of the people is being stored. But you have people who have access to that server, people who should not be having access. We had this issue in 2017 with the murder of Msando. We're having the same issues now. And then of course the whole thing cascades down, where you have returning officers being killed. You have returning officers, one was shot and his leg had to be chopped off because, he was being forced to sign some forms. This is the kind, it's like we are living in the wild, wild west, where we have a beautiful constitution, it's beautiful on paper, it's very progressive. Other jurisdictions on the continent and outside the continent use the Kenyan case as, we've got beautiful jurisprudence, but on the ground, who is following this constitution? When you have the same IEBC that appears to have been compromised, not even at the point of tallying the vote, right from the beginning in terms of hiring people, manipulating them, not funding them. When you have these kinds of you have got, this is the situation. And then you have, they're now compelled, to ignore Chapter 6 of the Constitution on integrity. How did some of these people who are now in parliament end up on the ballot? So we live in a country where nobody particularly wants, we cherry pick. And when I say we, I don't necessarily mean myself. Because if I decide to drive on the wrong side of the road today, I'll be arrested outside there and I'll be taken to jail. But a mheshimiwa with a Cheska can very easily drive on the wrong side of the road. Nothing happens to them. They can call whoever they want to call. So we live in a country where rules necessarily don't apply to everybody. The people who are the powerful, the people in power, people who are connected to the people in power can do what they want. And so this is where we find ourselves. The fact that people have to protect the vote at the polling station, for me, is an interesting thing. We are now asking, where were the agents? Why was the vote not being protected? Why must the vote be protected? I mean, we've seen other people voted. We even have, I have actually voted when I was a student in another country because I'm from a Commonwealth country. I voted. I went in there and I voted. There was just one clerk there. We threw the ballots in the box and they were counted and there was no stress. Why are we protecting the vote? So again, going back to the trust issue, once we have a trust problem in this country, nobody is trusting politicians. Nobody is trusting, and of course, no one is following the law. This is how we find ourselves here. So is the blame entirely on Chebukati and the IEBC, whatever we take the IEBC to be? Not entirely. But yes, some of the responsibility must fall on their door because the IEBC is entrusted with facilitating an election, allowing and giving us the space to choose our leaders with very big budgets. I keep going back to the budget. 44 billion was spent. I don't know how it was spent, but it was spent in this election. One of the most, if not the most expensive elections in the world, even more expensive than India, that has more voters than here. So we have big budgets, we have got beautiful institutions, but when people work hard to circumvent these institutions, to compromise institutions like the IEBC and all the commissioners that are in there, and I'm not saying that a split IEBC means these people are right and these people are wrong, but when you have an IEBC where people are sitting and saying, we were forced to moderate, we were not being involved, the chairman came and said, these are the results and I'm going to announce them, can you endorse them? This is a problem because that's not how it's supposed to work. So the trust issue, and then we live in a country where people operate with impunity. That, I think, is the problem. So the problem is not just IEBC's problem. I think this is a shared problem. We have a polity that is corrupt, and that corruption is now, for this particular issue, this is where it's being seen.